University Radio Bath.
You heard that. It's University Radio Bath, and you're listening to
You Can Talk. You Can Talk. Show hosted by Will Bryant. You Can Talk.
Yes, that's right. You're listening to You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by me, your host, Will Bryant. Now, listen. Last week was difficult for all of us. There was, of course, no edition of
You Can Talk. You Can Talk. Show hosted by Will Bryant. You Can Talk.
Which was difficult for all of us. And I felt terrible that last week you, dear listeners, were not able to talk because You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant, was not on the air. But this week we're back, and I'm delighted to say that You Can Talk. Because You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant, is back on air. And I've got a lot of talking to do, and I'm sure you do too. Now, just like every other week, over the next hour, we'll be listening to your opinions, your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, and we'll be debating it all together, like the happiest of families. Now, I say this every week, but it is just so important. I'm going to be your spokesperson over the next hour. I'm going to be firmly in the driving seat, steering you round the corners of controversy, past the bends of banality, down the straights of straight talking, right to the finish line of fun. And of course, we'll have some lovely songs to break it up along the way. Now, it's great to be back after a week off, and I'm going to start off with a very funny story before getting into some music and our first topic. Now, I was in Switzerland last week, and I had been warned before going to Switzerland that it's quite an expensive country. And I was walking along on my first day in Switzerland, and I'm walking across a bridge, and I see a sign which looks a lot like a petrol station price sign. And it says 715 litre. Now, I know that Switzerland is an expensive country, but at a best case scenario where perhaps the light that controlled the comma or the full stop was broken, that at best is 7.15 francs per litre, which is approximately £5.66. At the worst, where, really is 715 francs per litre, that's £566 a litre of fuel. But then I started thinking, what, that's really good. Let's make it hard for people to drive. Let's get them using public transport. Good on you. What a good idea. Let's start making change with really difficult policies like that, ones that disrupt the status quo. Then I realized that it was a sign for a car park, and it wasn't saying litre, but libre, French for free. So there were 715 free parking spaces. So after that wonderful start, we're going to get going with a song. Now, this song is really great, and hopefully it's going to get you in the mood for our first topic, which was announced just a few hours ago on social media, and it has got a lot of correspondence from it. So I can't wait to share that with you. But first, from our favourite band, The Hot Chips, we're ready for The Floor. Just a message for all my listeners, something that song inspired me to say, which is that you're all my number one guys. That was Hot Potato Chip with Ready for the Floor, slightly ironic given that the floor is the last place I'd like my chip to be. Welcome back to You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant. We're going to go straight into our first topic, which was announced on social media earlier this week. We're talking about bread. Is it good? Is it bad? Should it be a round? Should it be a square? Now, before we get going, just a quick personal story about bread. We'll just get some very inauspicious music going on behind that all. One day when I was a bit younger, a couple of years ago now, I had some bread. Best day of my life. What can I say? Does that mean that all bread is good? Maybe it does. Well, as I said earlier, we have got so many comments on this topic, so it's going to take a while to get through them all, and there's still more pouring in as we speak. But we'll start with one from Bill in Grantham, and he messages thusly: I really just love bread. You could say it's my Havice. That is very funny, Bill. Thank you very much. Love to the kids as well. Eustace from Carty says, whilst I appreciate bread, I think we eat too much of it. Humans weren't supposed to have a diet overly reliant on gluten and processed grains, and I think the growing obesity rates around the world are testament to this. Quite honestly, now is the time to rethink your dieting habits, switch to less processed foods, and reap the health benefits attached. Love the show. Keep up the talking. Eustace. Now, Eustace, thank you for this. But I must ask you, is the name of this show You Can Preach, the Preach radio show hosted by Will Bryant? No, it's not. It's You Can Talk. And so just think about that for next time, yeah? Now, recently, in recent months, this show has picked up quite a few European guests, which is absolutely fantastic. And this week, I got a message in from the home of bread itself, France. And Sylvie messaged him with the following. Now, what Sylvie may not know about me is that languages are very much my strong point. Unfortunately, she translated this herself into English, and there are a few errors, but that's fine. That's not what we're here to talk about. Anyway, she says, good day, Bryant. I eat the food to the French. It goes much better than the food to the English. They think bread is the square. It is the stick. The bread of France, it is the best of the world. I take also some coffee. It's super. Thank you, Sylvie. Now, given that grammar, that certainly could only have been written by a French person. Oh, we've got a message back from Jez in Southampton. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jez messaged last time around, didn't you? Let's see what he's got this time. He says, he's Nathan, Nathan. He toasts so much, he's Nathan Breadmond. Nathan Breadmond, you make the opposition look like toast. Nathan Breadmond, you make the others look like brioche. Okay, I think that's a Nathan Redmond joke there. Thank you very much. Oh, now it's time for my favourite part of the show. It's the film review. Now, last episode's film review went down so well that I thought I would just repeat it with just a little bit more detail. The film, I think, as far as I'm aware, is very much still in cinemas. This week's reviewed film is Little Women, and the review for it will happen now. Yeah, so really good. Now, every week we receive many hundreds of letters, but this one was just too good not to read out. So we're going to read it out now. This was a letter written by Clancy, and it goes as follows. Dear You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant. Now, there's been a lot of letters coming into you asking about where your co-presenter is. I think this is a bit rude. You've clearly marketed yourself as a solo radio show. That is what you might want me to say, but really, you need a co-presenter. The sound of your voice alone on the radio is a sad one. You need to change your act because it's just not working. And for your sake, I think someone else in the studio with a bit of a bouncing wall effect could really help. Just my thoughts from Clancy. Thank you very much, Clancy. That's very kind. Now it's time for my favourite part of the show, Word Jazz. Now, last week's Word Jazz went down incredibly well. I received some really great feedback. Imogen said, why does the word jazz have to be so short? It could easily be 4 times the length. Well, let's see how misguided that comment is. Now again, I had a lot of people asking me, why is there not a backing track for the word jazz? And what they fail to realise is that the words are the jazz. So this week's Word Jazz, coming now. Designer Time Nut, Other Exotic Committee, Orange Compartment Production, Lake Candle Interactive World. Spend, transform, delete, spoil, match. Variation approval, charismatic dignity, blonde hospitality, camera compromise, appear, abolish. Equinox, promotion shift, healthy burst, star decide, glass tree, shout. Export remedy, represent, battery wardrobe, constellation, tip sheet, stubborn draft, obscure increase spread, econobox arguments, cheek raw column profit, offensive rotate made, match mission literacy, fling civilization theatre. Temple, demonstrate, man, excuse, neighborhood, truth, cower, forestry, flag, support, dive, convention, lock, congress, steward, failure, soup. Marble, flower, satellite, straighten, graduate, bark, dirty, trouble, pole, far, vegetarian, punish, help, rank, lung, chauvinist, fold, hear, assessment, weak flock, innocent, inch, concept, embarrassment, disappoint, software, ample, freckle, employee, smash, city, academy, exercise, past, unique, display, top, just confrontation, conclusion, vacuum, human body style, tread, revival, junior, fiction, lit, message, rhythm, quest, far spoil, middle, outer, disclose, work low, trouser, oil, grip, bundle, access, drift, session, tenant, appoint. Wow, I've actually got goosebumps. That was quite something. Now, let's, whilst we're thinking about that word, jazz, let's listen to some actual music. This is My Night by Chaka Khan. This is My Night by Chaka Khan, and might I just say that this is my night here on University Radio Bath because you are listening to You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant, otherwise known as...
You Can Talk. The talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant.
The time is 5:23 p.m. That's UK time there. Just a quick little note that we've got on one of our bread topics. Jimmy Tapp says, I disagree with the other commenter, Eustace from Carty, who suggests that we should move away from bread in lieu of more traditional substances. Jimmy Tapp says I eat about 6 slices of bread with every meal, sometimes more, rarely less. In fact, you could say that I'm pretty well bred. Thank you, Jimmy Tapp. Now, today we've got, as we do every single week, one of my favourite sections of the show, which is the essay section. Every week, literally dozens of people message in with essays that they've written for us to read out, and we have to choose the best one to read out. This week we had so many good ones, it was really hard to choose the best one to read out, but eventually we found one. I think it's a very powerful piece, and it's called The Power of Silence. Increasingly today, we reach for noise or sounds as a comfort blanket. Whether it's turning on some music during a dinner party to act as a sort of low-level net to catch any conversations that start to fall away, or a loud bop in the car to help you traverse past the motorway junctions on the M6. Indeed, we often just say words, any words, to avoid the awkwardness of silence with someone else in the room. How's the weather? I slept badly last night. That sandwich looks nice. Yogurt? But what happens when the noise stops? Well, for a lot of us, that's quite difficult to make happen. But should it be? I think not. I think you can express emotionally more powerfully through silence than you can through words. A silent, empowered thought is worth thousands more than a blasé verbal nothing. J.S. Bach's magnificent St. Matthew's Passion, the 3.5-hour masterpiece traditionally performed on Good Friday every year, is a perfect example of this. At the end of it, you, the audience, and them, the performers, have been through every possible emotion. The music takes you to places you never thought possible. And yet at the end, people reach for their other hand to clap as loudly as possible. What a shame. The only sound you want to hear after something so divine, so perfectly inspired, so perfectly inspirational is, well, nothing. Any sound that follows that, the closing bars of the Passion, are so below its perfection, its divine inspiration, that they seem ruinous, an insult. The best sort of friends are those with whom you can sit silently and content. Likewise, though, are you able to be silent with yourself? I certainly struggle. You can turn off all the produced sound, you can close the window, turn off the speakers, shut the laptop lid. But then, what noise remains inside your head? Does your mind race across with 20 different sentences starting before any of them can finish? Can you really put that part of your brain to sleep? Before judging others, then, for making noise, be sure that you can do the same just by yourself. As William Penn said, true silence is the rest of the mind. It is to the spirit what sleep is to the body, nourishment and refreshment. Gosh, that's a very powerful piece. Thank you so much. As always, the writer of that decided to remain anonymous, which is absolutely their choice if they so desire. And whilst we think about that, we're going to listen to another important and powerful piece of music. This is Death Cab for Cutie with different names for the same thing. Different names for the same thing by Death Cab for Cutie there. Hayley messaged in during that song saying what's really clever about that song is the fugal texture of the final section that builds from nothingness and ends up being a cataclysmic, climactic and very enjoyable closing section to the song. Also nice to hear a song in the pop charts in 3/4. Well, thank you very much, Hayley. I'm not sure that this song has been in the pop charts, as you say, for a while, but thank you nonetheless. Now, moving back to our first incredible topic about bread, we've got a few more bits of correspondence, and then we're going to move on to our second topic, because that one is just as exciting. Lozenge from Yerp says, I like to carve a hole out of my slice and crack in an egg. Hole in one. Not sure that really works as a joke, Lozenge, but thank you nonetheless. Ursula from Whippard says, if a roll is particularly crusty, you can sprinkle some water on it and place in a hot oven for a few minutes. It will be good as new. Now, Ursula, that is that's quite an incredibly huge statement that you've just made there. Good as new. Good as new, as in literally as good as new. Like, genuinely as good. I mean, why would we ever make any bread then, if we can make it as good as new with a drip of water in the oven? I think you just need to, I know that I say I'm your spokesperson, but I don't want to just be filling this show with lies. Sorry about that, Ursula, but that's really got on my nerves. Look, you know what, let's move on to our second topic. Obviously bread was a slightly overly controversial topic for a Monday at 5:35pm, which is the time you're listening to You Can't Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryan. We're moving on to our second topic now. Now, this one got, if not more love than the first one, and we're going to start, I'm going to start by announcing what the topic is, because I'm not sure I have yet. The topic is biscuits. We've got some really great stuff coming for biscuits. Now, John says, 2 digesters with an afternoon cup of tea, that's all I'm allowed. Now, John, don't let anyone tell you how many biscuits you can eat. You do you, John. Ian from Inchley says, I once had bad indigestion, so I ate 19 digestives to try and help it all along. Didn't work, felt ill for the whole weekend, ruined my time, and wasted the train tickets I'd bought to Nuneaton. Sorry to hear about that, Ian. I know that the journey from Inchley to Nuneaton is a particularly difficult one. Deza from Newquay has just texted in, parents meeting almost over, with you by 8x. Dolly from America is considering pan-frying some biscuits. She says, custard cream, custard cream, custard cream, custard cream. I'm begging of you, please don't stick to my pan. Custard cream, custard cream, custard cream, custard cream. Please don't stick to it just because you can. Your beauty is beyond compare with falling crumbs of hydro biscuit base layer. With malty smell and a centre of sweetened cream, your smile is like a breath of spring. Your voice is soft like summer rain, and I cannot compete with you, custard cream. Custard cream, custard cream, custard cream, custard cream. I'm begging of you, please don't stick to my pan. Custard cream, custard cream, custard cream, custard cream. Please don't stick to it just because you can. Well, Dolly, thank you so much for that little comedic tip there. It was just slightly too long. Heat from Astral says, biscuits go great with a stew or breakfast. Now, this is absolutely fascinating. This is one of the many reasons why I like doing this show. What an amazing cultural difference. Heat from Astral. Astral, I'm sure, is somewhere in the United States of America. Obviously, biscuits there refer to what we might call a sort of dumpling, a sort of floury mass of carbohydrate that you put into a stew to keep you energized through the long, cold winters, or indeed the short summers that we get in the UK, am I right? They don't often feel like summer, do they? No, they don't. Listen, Heat from Astral, thank you so much. Obviously, just check and see before messaging in exactly what type of biscuit we're talking about. We really were focusing on the UK version of the biscuit. You know, the sort of the thin, sweet, often sweet. Could be with cheeses. That's more oaty. Getting off topic. Thank you very much. Now, I've got a message in from Jack. Doesn't say where he's from, always suspicious. And he says, today I ate a bueno for the first time in this particular way, I just ate it without letting the pieces dissolve in my mouth, the chocolate to melt and the wafers to go softer, and let out the hazelnut cream inside. It wasn't as good as usual. Okay, Jack, I'm not sure buenos are really a biscuit, but thank you nonetheless. I've got a message in from Sarah from Yateley, who says, Dear You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryan, could you help please? I have been trying to find Fox's biscuits, that's what she says, biscuits in the supermarket, but all I can find is a label called Fox's Biscuits. I looked at the adverts and the small little bear, or whatever it is, has made me want to find Fox's Biscuits because they look good, but I can't find them. So could you help? I don't think Fox's Biscuits are the same brand. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. We'll see what we can do. Now, it's time for one of my favourite parts of the show. It's time for Give Willin a Grillin'. That's right, it's time for you to ask me the questions that you've always wanted to ask, but always been too scared to ask. And I will answer the questions that you ask, that you've often been too scared to ask. First question is from Mikey. He says, why, Hill? Good start. Is all that glitters not gold? Okay. Well, all I'd say to you, Mikey, is that only shooting stars break the mold. Jackson says, have you been here before? Don't know what that means. Marie says, shellac or varnish? Both? Marie comes in with a second straight away. Nail file or clippers? Well, I think you need a bit of both, and I've got to say I quite often dabble with a bit of stop and grow because I'm a nervous old man. Time to move on to one of my favourite parts of the show now. It's the advice column. So this part of the show has become amazingly popular with our listeners, which I'm so glad about because it's one of my favourite parts of the show. As I say every week, people message in with any range of issues, and it's just up to me as the host of You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant, to help you work through any issues you might be having in your life. And this one is really, really good letter, so I thought it was worth reading out. And we'll just let this incredible Soul Bossa Nova by Quincy Jones fade out, because this is serious stuff. Dear Will Bryant, host of You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant. My friend won't make time for me on the daily. We used to eat sundaes and other cold dairy products together, but since last Sunday, he's given up on our frozen treats. A few days ago, I saw him munching on a chalk ice in the rain. I considered asking him why he was doing that when Dino's was right next door, with their selection of rainbow-coloured sprinkles. He said, it's his life, he can do what he wants, he likes wet chalk ice. Oliver was such a dear friend. Our friendship spread further than just ice cream. We went to milkshake bars, we went to the cheesemonger, we went to butteries and milk farms. We loved it all. I'd be horrified if he found out I messaged in, as I know he is a keen listener of the show, but I just needed some help to get my dairy friend back on board. With best wishes from Lenny Peters in Westbury. Thank you, Lenny. That's really nice. Now, we've been doing a lot of talking, which I suppose is right, because you are listening to You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant, but I think it's time for a little bit of music, and this one goes out to my good friend Mark, who requested this song. It's the Lighthouse Family with Ocean's Drive. Ocean Drive there by the Lighthouse Family. Just a few things to say as that fades out. The first thing is that the Lighthouse Family, now I didn't know this, I just put them on because I quite like their blend of 90s keyboard and vocals. But they're now they're back on tour. They tweet 25 years since our first ever Lighthouse Family live show at the Blue Lamp in Hull in 1995. So they're back on tour. They've been playing, and well, let's see if we can find some tickets over the next few minutes. The other thing to say is that Michael messaged in saying, loved the Nathan Bradman joke from Jez and Southampton, highlight of the show so far. Thank you very much, Michael, for that. Now it's time for my favourite part of the show.
You can talk. You can talk. Show hosted by Will Bryant. You can talk.
I should say that my favourite part of the show is not the jingle, although I must admit that it is quite good quality. My favourite part of the show is Say Whatever You Want. It is my favourite part of the show. It's Say Whatever You Want. Now, a quick reminder for any newer listeners tuning in. Every week I trawl through the correspondence that we get for the show, and we do get a lot. And I read out the funniest or the best quality letter that I received that week. If you win, you get a free bobblehead statue of me in the post. Now, I'm delighted to announce that this week's winner is pilatesinstructor@gmail.com from Taunton. They write, last Monday, I got into the car to drive home, fearful of what idiotic roughage I might have to listen to on the way home. Thankfully, though, your show wasn't on. Oh, how I rejoiced. When I got home, I stayed in my car for a further 40 minutes until 6 p.m, revelling in the lack of you I had to listen to. Oh, please don't bother coming back for more. With love, pilatesinstructor@gmail.com. Thank you so much, pilatesinstructor@gmail.com. Your bobblehead is in the post. Now it's time for another one of my favourite sections of the show. It's Speed Bump of the Week. Now, for newer listeners, every week I get a lot of pictures of speed bumps, and I like to share the often very witty comments that people reply with them. And this one is an absolute one of the best I think I've ever seen. And it's a continental speed bump, or bump of speed as it might be referred to there. Now this one was spotted in France by Tim Rupster, and he says, Bonjour, tu peux parler l'émission radio de Will Bryant. Very good. I saw a particularly fine speed bump whilst moving through France in my muscle car. It fair old scraped the base of my chassis. It was live and svelte, smoothly attached to the road so I could barely see it. Serves me right for driving at night without headlights on, but I'm just trying to show the moon the respect it deserves. Thank you, Tim. I'm not entirely sure that that's legal, but as you wish. And now, so we're really rolling through these segments, but there's a lot to get through before the time reaches 6 o'clock. This is now our advert, which happens every week, mainly because I do need the money. Can't stress that enough. Not a desperate call for help, but it's fine. Because of this sponsor, it's okay. So we'll let this one fade out. And here we go with our week's advert. Our sponsor this week is Yardek Beers. What's better than cracking open a cold one with the boys? Nothing, you say? No, you're wrong. The only thing better than cracking a cold one open with the boys is having a cold one that doesn't need to be cracked. Pre-cracked beers from Yardek Beers are in stores now. Settle down for a nice cold one without the bore of having to crack the cold one open with the boys. Just have the cold one with the boys. I would say though, keep them upright, otherwise there won't be any cold ones to have with the boys, cracked or otherwise. Thank you very much from our sponsors, Yardek Beers there. Not the best written advert, but as I said, I don't write the adverts, they just tell me what to read out. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh. It's time for the news. The time is 5:51 p.m. and you're listening to You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by Will Bryant, and this is the news. It's really happening this week. Really, it is. That thing. It's happening this week. Yes. Computer hard drives are getting smaller. No, you silly, not in terms of memory, in terms of physical size, you idiot. Computer hard drives are now so small you can see them with more difficulty than before. What could this mean for technology industries? Lots. Chickpeas have distanced themselves from the water they are tinned with. One chickpea said, "Yeah, we don't like it either." Another one said, "Oh yeah, that water is like the clingiest of friends. Just give me some space," I wanted to shout throughout my months in the tin. The water said, Huge confusion has been caused when the coefficient regulation number 83 was introduced this week in area code 732. Many different hyperdrives have been reneged upon with a slowing down of regression and an increase in opulence. Weakened graphs have virtually dissipated, and there's no sign of it yielding anytime soon. Time for the sport now, and in this week's sport there was a lot of activity. England in the rugby, England in the cricket as well, Ireland in the rugby, Arsenal and Everton had a match in the football. I think there was some snooker, maybe some darts as well. France as well. France and Wales in the rugby. There are 6 nations, and I think I've named them all now. Scotland, maybe? Scotland and Italy. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 nations of rugby. Time for some traffic. There is some traffic on the A road north of city centres across the section. Thank you very much. Now it's time for arguably my favourite part of the show. It's time for the spoken word section. Now, as every week, this section is actually not written in by someone else, but it's the one part of the show that really is sort of mine, and it's really just where I try to, share some thoughts that I've had from the week, try and give you some inspiration, and it means a lot to me. So this one is called Alive House, and it's about houses being alive. Sometimes, whilst alone in my house, I like to lie in bed and just listen. Listen to the house as it creaks its way around. All of its fibres and muscles loosening and tightening like an athlete after a race. Sometimes you hear things you never thought you could, like the release of pressure from a boiler, a clock clicking 2 floors below, the neighbour making their dinner. But it's the sounds of the cracks in the walls that enchant me the most. No one has moved in the house for hours, and yet still the floors move around, trying to find their most comfortable position. With each crack, it seems to take on more and more of a persona. We've all had those nights where we just couldn't find the right position for hours. Suddenly you hear a real sound, one that you might have been expecting. Someone coming home from a long day of work, the kettle going on, the fridge opening, a glass being filled. Sometimes you hear the familiar crash and the fall of the post being delivered. And then there's the noise outside. The cars, the birds, the planes, the sirens, the conversations that carry through the air from streets away. In the countryside, you hear the incessant moving of nature, the animals that make the same noises that they have for millennia. Houses are alive. We are but residents in them for a temporary time. They're more than us. They live like us. They are us. Wow, it's always hard for me to bare my soul like that, but I'm glad that I have the opportunity to do it. Now, as with every week, we really like to highlight the work of a young artist that's up and coming, and maybe just give them that extra little push to get over the hump. And this week's artist is an amazing up-and-coming organist from London, and this is their rendition of Duruflé's Choral Varié. That was quite an incredible up-and-coming musician. Now, we've just got time for 2 poems before we play the last song of the day. Now, this one is called Shade. Shade is like a sun without love. Shade is like the cold without a glove. Shade is like a glass without ice. Shade is that person who ain't that nice. This next one is called Happening. Happened once, happened twice. Gave my son the cheating dice. He won the game. He doesn't look at me the same. Oh, how hard it is for sons to see their fathers as anything other than heroes. There we go. You've been listening to You Can Talk, the talk radio show hosted by your host, Will Bryant. It's been quite an incredible show with some quite controversial points on bread and biscuits. I've very much enjoyed it, and we'll be back for more in the future. But until then, keep talking. I know I will.